Hey everyone, I believe we're now live. This is an PM mock interview, and forgive the lag and etc. that may happen throughout this interview, but I'm super excited to be here today with Schloss, who's a former Google PM. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, my name is David Schlossberg. I've been a product manager for about 15 years. I started my career in software development. I burnt down on that really quickly, got my master's, and then discovered this really cool field called product management, where I could take my tech background, combine it with all the fun stuff I learned in my master's. And then since then, I've worked at a ton of startups. I've worked at one unicorn, one company called Google, and for the past 5 years have been managing teams of product managers. So I've got a ton of experience in the process of going through product management interviews, hiring people, and I'm happy to be here today.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, we're excited to have you. And so for the viewers who may not know how this works, we are going to do a live mock interview where I will ask a question to Schloss about a certain type of question, and then we'll simulate a real mock interview. After the session, we'll do a little bit of feedback and some closing just notes and comments. Throughout this, you are more than welcome to and encouraged, in fact, to chime in via the buttons on the bottom of the screen, likes, hearts, wow faces, whatever you want to give, as well as comments throughout. We love questions, we love comments, we love just like thumbs up because it makes us feel good and makes us feel like this is worth your time too. And please subscribe and like our page as well if this content is valuable to you, so that we know that we can make more types of this content. Cool. So now that I got that out of the way, we'll go ahead and dive into the interview. So in this interview, we're going to do a product strategy question. Product strategy questions are kind of a mixture of a lot of different aspects of business and also product design. And they're commonly asked at companies like Google to test your product manager's ability to strategically think about the direction of products and product vision. It's a very important part of product vision. So I'll go ahead and ask the question. So the question that Schloss and I are going to do today is, should Google launch a competitor to Amazon Prime Video? You can take it away whenever you're ready, Schloss.
Yeah, happy to. So the answer is not specifically. They should not launch a direct competitor to Amazon Prime Video, but Google could launch a competing product to Amazon Prime. And when I like to think about these strategy questions, I always like to think about who are the actors that are involved in these transactions, and how would they be changed based on this strategic outcome. So let's imagine the world where Google has this Amazon Prime Video competition, and think about it from the perspective of Google, from Google's users, and then from the competitors as well. So from Google, Google doesn't like spending money on content. They have this really cool thing called YouTube, where they get tons and tons of content for practically free. They have launched premium products in the past before, and even have put like some money into YouTube production, but like they're not putting in the same kind of money like some of their competitors are, like Amazon and Netflix, who are pouring hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars into their video production. So like from Google's perspective, like that's sort of like direct, like we're going to start like producing really expensive content. Like that's not Google's MO. That's not the way Google likes to do things. From the perspective of like Google's users, Google, there's a lot of competition that these users can buy their premium video services from a lot of different companies, and there's already distinguishing things that, like, if you go buy from Netflix, you're getting all of Netflix's really cool extra content. You're getting all of Hulu's really cool production content. Google doesn't have that same sort of hook that they could get people with right away. So like video alone is not enough of a thing to get the users to go to Google's video service over some of those other competitors' services. And just to like wrap on the competition side, remember that Amazon Prime Video is not just Amazon Video. It's also free delivery. It's books. It's a whole bunch of other stuff that you also get on top of your video. So when I say Google should not specifically compete with Amazon Prime, what I mean is that Google could offer a different kind of competitive product, like combining ad-free YouTube with a free subscription to Google Music, plus extra cloud storage, free apps, and a whole bunch of other stuff that is a bundle of really cool Google products that could compete with Amazon Prime. It would actually be something like distinct and unique from Amazon Prime, And something like that actually could be really competitive with Amazon Prime, where Google doesn't have to do the same kind of massive expenditures on crazy content and new shows like Amazon or Hulu or Netflix does.
Gotcha. So in this case, you're sort of talking about it may make sense on a high level, but in the lower level case of just the video content, it doesn't make sense.
Correct.
Got it. And so, if just to follow up there, like, how would we think about this? Let's say that we are deciding that we want to compete in that space. Would there be like how would we think about that decision strategically? So you made a recommendation to Sundar. He says, "No, I don't care. I still want to do it anyways." How would we think about the product strategy in that case?
Yeah. So in that case, you'd have to ask the question. What would Google need to do that would convince people that they should use Google's premium video service, either instead of or in addition to other premium video services that they use? So, for example, it's not unheard of that someone has a subscription to Hulu and to Netflix. So, like, would they subscribe to Hulu and Netflix and Google Video? The main way that these video services have been competing with each other is by having unique content that's only available on their platform, that is not available on the competition's platform. And most of them, like I said, have done it through the custom creation of like new shows and new content that is only available on their platform. YouTube, I think, has done something like that as well. And so what Google could do is say, all right, we're going to take $500 million. We're going to go hire some really awesome Hollywood writers, and they are going to go and create all this custom content so that the users really have a compelling reason to sign up for Google's video service, and maybe instead of some of those other services. So I think like that would be like the most naive solution. It's nothing that's like really special or unique, but it has like a very high cost of entry. Mm-hmm. And it may not be enough to really convince people. There's other options that Google could take to distinguish their service as well, like offering it at a lower price point. Google could perhaps do that if they could repurpose some of the information that they get from people about, say, their show preferences and turn that into stuff that can be targeted by companies who are serving ads at the other end. Google likes to do that with a lot of their services, where like we learn a whole bunch about you from a whole bunch of different services, and then we can use that to make better decisions about what to show you elsewhere throughout Google properties. So that could be another approach that Google could take, is to think about like, well, like we can maybe offer it as a cheaper alternative, or in exchange that that your information is being used to perhaps target you for services or advertisements.
Okay, great, and thanks for handling that follow-up loop that I just gave you, which is fun to do in an interview when you just came up with an answer and then I have you argue the other perspective. I'm curious also just to talk a little bit more about like, so in this world where Google is doing this sort of strategy, it sounds like Google can compete on cost. It's one of the big factors it can compete on, and also like you're saying content, but content might be a challenging one to compete on because Google has to get a lot of like original content, and that would be a high upfront cost for Google. Are there other factors that you think would differentiate a product with Google and Amazon, or maybe like what wouldn't differentiate Google and Amazon too? So for example, like I can imagine the way the video plays might not be a key competitive advantage for either company, perhaps. So I'm curious if to tease out more and to push you just a little bit more to see how you might think about what matters and what doesn't matter in this kind of space.
Yeah, well, let me talk a little bit about what does not matter so much.
Sure.
All these companies are generally offering the same kind of performance. Like, you can download the videos really quickly. They stream at really high quality. It's not like there's like you're going to offer it at if you offer it at like a 1080p resolution versus like a 4K or something else like that. Like that's not significant enough unless you're like really at the extreme end of someone who like cares so much about video quality that like you're going to notice something like that. Most people won't notice something like that.
Right.
There could be other smaller ways Google could differentiate their services. Like, for example, maybe Google could strike some sort of deal where they allow all the video content to be played offline on Android devices. where like something where like you could kind of tie that into other Google products and services. A lot of those other streaming services don't let you save content offline, and so maybe that might not be like that could be something that if you're a very heavy mobile user, maybe if you're a traveler, like you travel a lot on airplanes where you don't have reliable Wi-Fi connection. If you could just download any video that you want on demand, and it just kind of shows up on your phone, that could be something that differentiates it. Let me think of what else. Maybe Google could offer like other kinds of things, like for example, if I recall correctly, I think it was in their Stadia launch, they're offering some sort of thing where you can like get free video games. Like this is if you sign up for their streaming video game service. So maybe Google could offer something like, well, you sign up for our video service and you get to own some of the video on top of being able to rent it. Like, so maybe you get to own, like buy, quote unquote, buy one video every month or some with some sort of credit, and keep it permanently on top of your monthly subscription that gets you free downloadable access. So like there are like little things that Google could do that would differentiate themselves. I don't think any of those significantly changes the math behind this though. Like I don't think someone switches to Google because they get one free download a month. But maybe they care enough about offline playing that that is something that might be more meaningful for them.
Cool. Yeah, and I just want to pause here as we keep going through this interview. If you're watching, we love comments, thoughts, reactions, likes, subscribes, all that kind of good stuff, especially if you have any questions that you would like answered by us or questions that you want to ask directly as a part of this interview. We'd love to hear that. So do comment below if you're watching this. Like, we love the interactivity. It really helps us too. So would love any sort of that kind of thing. Yeah, okay, and cool. So that we kind of talked about the differences in that world. I'm curious to just poke your brain more now on switching gears back to the Google Amazon piece. If Google were to compete with Amazon Prime, what are some of like the brainstorms or dreams that you would include or leverage maybe when thinking about like a Google package versus a Prime package?
Yeah, I think Google could take advantage of some of the other services that Google has and find ways to package them up together to make a really compelling offer that you really just ought to switch to Google for all of your digital service needs. And that's something that Amazon and frankly, like a lot of those other companies would have a really hard time replicating. So some examples of some of those things would be, here's a terabyte of Google Drive space that costs Google practically nothing. And most people will not even use it. But if you say like, hey, Google, here's like my $10 a month for free videos plus all this extra storage space, that would be pretty fantastic. Other things like ad-free YouTube, access to Google Music, I think I mentioned that. They could give away free Android applications. Google just has a slew of other products that kind of have premium-ish services on top of them. And so I think the best way to create like a Google package is to just take some of those things and just like stick them all together and actually make something that's really compelling at the outset. Maybe Google could even go further, like, hey, you get Google search without ads. Or as you browse like other like websites out there where Google AdSense ads would pop up, maybe some of those just get replaced with thanks for being a Google subscriber. Things like that actually like could have some meaningful, could be meaningful for a lot of people, especially people who might be really sensitive to advertisements, people who need a lot of extra data storage. I think so. I think that's the best way that Google can approach this problem is by just like you take a whole bunch of other things that doesn't cost Google very much, and then offer them as something that actually like turns a so-so video offer into actually like a pretty fantastic, I'm going to keep you hooked into the Google ecosystem offer.
Nice. Yeah, I think that would be a really fascinating experience if I could just remove ads from Google. Like if I could pay money and just get the ads to go away, that would be crazy. Yeah, I wonder, I'm curious, like, why you think Google maybe wouldn't want to do that, or like what the, like, let's say like Google could just do that. Like we could have a subscription service where you pay Google money and you don't see ads, which is kind of what happens on YouTube with a lot of YouTube products. Why not? Like, that sounds awesome.
No, that's an excellent question. I think the short answer is ads are Google's bread and butter. Google makes nearly all of its revenue from advertisements. And I'm sure there's like some calculation you could come up with that like says like, well, how much is a person month of ad revenue, like a user month of ad revenue for Google, right? So like with all the Google searches that I do, or all the Google ads that I see on other publishers' websites across the web, Google probably makes more than $10 off me in a month, than like the $10 I could pay to Google directly. So that right there would be like the most immediate impact. It also would have downwind impacts too, which is that Google advertisers are paying Google because they want their ads placed and because they want their ads seen and clicked. So if there's a service where Google says like, well, you can have all of these customers except for that one, that actually makes Google a less compelling offer for advertisers. And so Google would actually be cutting its own throat if they offered something like that. I'll take back my idea. It's probably not the best thing for Google to offer as a subscription service, just for that reason. They if advertisers would be very upset. Like it would actually make Google a much worse platform for advertising.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it depends on, of course, like how much traffic they get and all that kind of stuff, but like how much traction that product gets. But I could imagine that nuking like Google's core bread and butter, as you said. But it's interesting because that's in tension with the user experience, which might be a lot better. You know, a lot of users nowadays might want to pay money actually to get rid of their advertisements. And so I think it's a worthwhile discussion at the very least to just kind of talk through those things. Cool. Well, again, I know y'all are watching, so we haven't gotten any comments yet and questions, but we would love to get your comments. I see some of you watching. And so, just comment below with just some thoughts, questions, ideas, even if it's just, asking David what's his favorite product or something, or what his ice cream flavor is. It's just good to get some of that interaction back and forth. So please do comment below or give us a like if you're enjoying this. And yeah, so David, I guess like the last piece I kind of want to end on, I'm curious about from a broader perspective, if in general, like how a company should think about its competitive products. Like, we talked about kind of an instance in this case of Google and Amazon, but I'm curious, like, how do you generally think about it for products, startups, companies, etc.?
Yeah. Give me a second to think about that.
Totally. Yeah, not an easy question.
So there's two things in particular that come to mind. The first one is that it's always okay to compete with someone because there's usually room in a market for more than one product to be successful. There's always a first place winner. The second place company usually does pretty well too. If you're third, fourth, fifth, and so on, like maybe then you probably need like something else going for you. Maybe it's like your secondary or tertiary product, and you're making your money somewhere else. So like there's always room in a market for lots of people to compete over the same users, over even the same type of product specifically. We see that all the time, and we're seeing it again, like in the video space is a perfect example where Netflix and Hulu and YouTube are capturing most of the revenue, but now there's just a whole like flurry of new video streaming services that are coming online very soon. And so there's always room to like have your product in competition. The second then is what's your niche? Like what's the thing that's special or different about your product that's not that none of the other products can replicate or would have a really tough time replicating. So again, to use the video space as an example, it's the content itself that's actually like the really valuable asset here. So a lot of these movie studios who are going to launch their own video streaming service, what they've done is you can only watch the Marvel movies on Disney's new streaming service. You're not going to see it anywhere else. And so that's the reason why you would subscribe to that service, and maybe in addition to one of the others, maybe instead of one of the others. But it's because like I love Marvel movies so much, I'm going to pay them my $10 a month to get those movies. So if you are going to go into competition, like especially like in a space that already has a ton of competition already, you need that thing that makes you unique, that makes you different. It could be the content, it could be the price point, it could be a lot of other things. But those are the two things I would say that are the most important when you're thinking about the competition is, will you be number one? Because if you're not number one, then you need to understand the economics of not being the first place player in that space. And then what's your unique proposition that's going to convince people to use your product and not someone else's?
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So let's wrap it there. I've done enough putting you on the spot for now, so you can take a big breath. And yet again, I will just queue up. If folks have questions, please comment below. Even if it's just questions about PMing or Google, etc. We would love to get your interactions and thoughts and comments and likes and all that kind of good stuff. So we talked a lot about a bunch of different things. I want to kind of kick it now to the feedback section where we talk about how that went. And sort of some high-level strategies for the interview that are practical. Before I do that, Schloss, do you have anything that you kind of wanted to reflect on how that went for you? I know I gave you a lot of questions. Yeah, like before we jump into kind of my thoughts.
Sure. I mean, definitely not my best interview ever, but I think there were sometimes
I surprised you a lot, so
exactly.
Yeah,
I think I was not as organized as I could have been in some of my responses. I felt like I was struggling to come up with good ideas for some of those questions you put me on the spot. If this had been a real interview session, I probably would have taken a little bit more time, kind of written down some ideas and just done a little more brainstorming. In fact, like that's often the feedback that I have for most other, like when I'm helping other people in the interview process. The feedback I give them most often is take those 30 seconds, make sure you write down your answers, make sure you kind of get the thoughts out of your head onto paper, and then use that as a guide when you give your responses. I think that's the thing that I would have done had this been a quote unquote real interview rather than this sort of mock session.
Yeah, I think just by the way, to cue that up, I didn't mention, but Schloss is also one of our coaches. So if you're looking to interview at companies like Google as a product manager, we have a team of coaches at Exponent that are excited and ready to help you ace that PM interview. But I totally was going to say, like, I think you had a lot of great thoughts. So just to give all the viewers a sense, like we only talked about one of the first question beforehand. And then I sort of added all that follow up myself. So kind of put Schloss on the spot there. But I think you handled it really well, especially given that, there was kind of a lot of that back and forth and pushing you and pulling you. And, a classic move that the interviewer will do is take what you're saying and just say, like, argue the opposite side or like do the other thing. And so, but I think it shows to have a domain expertise that you're able to speak about both sides of that perspective. And yeah, I think the structure for me was like the biggest piece that I would definitely love. And I mean, it sounds like you reflected on it too, but just like kind of going through a list of like, okay, these are the reasons why, or these are like the aspects why of the competitive nature. And like, some sort of, we don't really believe in like frameworks too much, but some sort of like kind of high level process or map of going about that question would have been helpful. So it's like, okay, first we're going to talk about, I think you did a little bit of that as like cost is one factor. Another factor is like, I forget that piece, but another one could have been, okay, what are the in competition, like what are the risks now? What are the risks in the future, right? Like what are the current competitors like in the future? How will this change, right? And so thinking about the present and the future maybe could help frame some of those concepts. But overall, I think these product strategy questions are actually quite new. They're like more infrequently asked at companies like Google. They actually just recently added a section for it. So they're something that, everyone's still kind of experimenting with, and there's not as clear of a structured approach as like a product design question. So a lot of it is this kind of back and forth with the interviewer about like, okay, well, why don't they do that? Or like, why don't they do that? Or like, why should they do that? And I think thinking on your feet and being able to respond quickly is like a big part of it as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything you just said there. I would note that the big difference between like a great product manager who's interviewing at Google and a pretty good one is the ability to really think on your feet and stay on your feet during the course of that interview. The great PMs are the ones they don't get flustered or phased when you come back around and say, like you said, now argue the other side of this question.
Yeah.
Great PMs are the ones who just are on top of every single answer and can just jump right in and be right, or at least as right as you could be to answer a question like that.
Yeah, totally. I think that is just one general trait that's really effective in interviews in general. And so, keeping your calm and your cool and being able to navigate that interview and know that it's going to go in a direction that you're not totally comfortable with. But, it's going to be a really good way to showcase that, as product managers do, you got to think on your feet, you got to think quickly, etc. Cool. So I got one comment from the Slack channel that we're in, the Exponent Slack channel, but no comments on the actual page. So again, folks, maybe it's a slow day or it's at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday and people are trying to do more fun stuff than watch a PM mock interview. But would love your comments. Like, if you're watching this video right now, please do comment or show a reaction or anything like that so that we can respond to any of your questions. But in the meantime, another question I had is from the Slack channel is how strategic are the decisions made by product managers at Google? So to add a little on this question, I'm assuming it's kind of, there are a lot of strategic decisions that gets made at startups. Like I can kind of get that, that's obvious, but like what about strategic decisions made at Google? Like do product managers actually get a say in those kinds of decisions?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I can help answer it too, but I figured, I don't know if you have a quick answer.
I'll tell you from like my own experience, and the answer is it depends. There are definitely some teams at Google. I worked in ads and I worked in the commerce team at different points. And in the ads team, it was probably the most mature part of Google when it comes to product management. And the product managers are, it's very much bottoms up managed. So the individual product managers actually get a ton of say on the strategy and direction and things like that, compared to other teams in Google, which are much more top-down managed. Now, that's not to say you don't have like some sort of say in the strategy or where things are headed, but just that you're probably going to be given some like very high-level strategy that you're trying to achieve, and like you in conjunction with some other PMs are trying to figure out how you do your part to accomplish that strategy. Or like I said, is it more about like actually like you're kind of on your own, go figure it out, and that was definitely how my time went at Google and on different teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'm trying to think what I would say to add to that. I think that's a good point. I think it does depend a lot because Google's such a big company that you can just get a lot of different kinds of products and strategies and things like that. Like even I'm imagining part of strategy is like prioritizing which features to build or like prioritizing which products to invest time in. And that is a strategic decision at the end of the day, right? But I do think that in some aspects of Google or some aspects of other companies, you don't actually have to interface with the business logic that much. So for example, if you're working on a very user-facing feature or a feature that doesn't actually generate revenue, you might not need to think too much about the financial implications of your product, and you might just the scope is narrower because you're kind of thinking less about the long-term strategic impact of being a platform like Android versus being a flagship product like the iPhone. And so that's just a different nature of how big Google is, basically.
Yeah, I would add one last thing, which is I think at Google, I had much more strategic freedom than pretty much any other company that I'd worked at. So I definitely don't want you to get the idea that you're just going to get locked in and doing what you're told at Google. Actually, far from. In fact, Google really wants great product managers because they want the way that you think about problems. They want you to come and actually try to solve things in the way that you think are the best way to do them. So like I said, compared to other companies I've worked at, Google was far more loose in terms of the way that in terms of the ownership that product managers had compared to being told what to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think there's still a lot of exciting strategic decisions. We're running up against the 30-minute mark, and that's usually about when I want to kind of pause. Thanks to those who are watching. I know we didn't maybe get as many comments this time, but it sounds like we got a lot of viewers, so who knows. But if you do have any other comments or thoughts or questions, Schloss, what's the best way to reach out to you? Or is there anything else you'd want to plug for being on the show? Yeah,
of course. Yeah, if you want to get in touch with me, you can always go to my website, themeat.org, themeat.org. And my email is dave at that address. So I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have. And you can see a whole bunch of other content on that website regarding issues in product management, design, and tech ethics.
Cool. Yeah, and for those of you in Exponent, Schloss is in the Slack channel as well, so you can always DM him directly there, or you can always reach out to me or Schloss to get a coaching session if you're interested in any sort of PM interview prep if you're preparing for your upcoming interview. with that, I think we're sort of on a wrap. So thanks so much, Schloss, for doing this product strategy interview. I hope you had fun. I had fun, and I hope everyone else watching had fun as well.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks very much.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.